Hey, we are back and we've not moved. So we have Justine back on the poddy today, and we are delving into a subject that is far from my expertise in any way, shape or form. But I think it's so interesting, and I've spoken to you through over time and sort of about clients and things. And we're talking about, I guess, the vegan life and like nutrition. And I think there's so many people that think, oh my God, vegans just eat veg. Like, do you know what I mean? And obviously, I imagine there are people out there that just probably do.
Oh, yeah.
But actually, we do need to still be looking at everything we are getting into your diet. Now, obviously, I'm a completely meat eater, so I don't tend to have a lot of vegan meals. I do like some vegan things, but I'm a cheese lover too much as well. So
I'm lactose intolerant, so that was
really,
just
it works perfectly. So yeah, when you haven't always been vegan.
No, I was meat eater for 23 years. So I've only been vegan coming up 5 years now.
Wow. And how come? Just through...
It was, I get asked this question like all the time. For me, it was like never an ethical thing. It was never like originally for the animals.
Yeah.
It was purely, I just wanted to try something different.
Cool.
I actually went vegetarian first, so I was vegetarian for about a year.
It's like easing it in.
Exactly, but I don't eat many dairy products because obviously I'm lactose intolerant. So the only thing that I was really eating was eggs.
Okay.
So
what, from when you were veggie?
From when I was veggie, and obviously around that time I had just started my bodybuilding journey as well. So like.
So you only started bodybuilding through being like vegan veggie?
Pretty much, yeah. So I actually, like, funny enough, Abby Willis was a huge support and like a help in me going vegan because we always talked about it, but Abby had never had any vegan clients. I was her first one. So it was kind of like a learning curve for both of us, really, because I just... Obviously, being a bodybuilder, my main source of protein, being a vegetarian, was eggs. I got the ick, like hardcore, and I was like, I can't physically eat
I don't
eggs.
blame you. I feel you on that. I remember once John was like, have 15 egg whites, and I was like,
oh, I couldn't imagine anything worse.
No, yeah, and since then, I just don't. I have to really, really fancy eggs if I want them, but I will do everything in my power to not touch them.
Yeah.
And I don't really think I've touched them much at all, to be honest. So I completely understand that.
Yeah.
So then you decided to go vegan?
Yeah, literally just said the words to Abby, and obviously Abby is nutritionally qualified. She's got a master's, so like if anyone was going to help me, it was going to be her. But she was like, let me do some homework, and she was like, I want to make you a meal plan that's going to stick, that you're going to enjoy.
Yeah,
that's not just going to be like tofu. Because I was like,
here's some lettuce, here's some tofu. Ta-da!
But yeah, she kind of like went away, and she came back to me with like a very good kind of like starting point. And then from then on, it was just sort of,
I suppose it's trying.
Exactly, trial and error, and just seeing what foods I liked, what I didn't like. Obviously, after eating tofu every day for like 3 months, I was like, no more tofu. I was
that's enough.
I'm a poor excuse for a vegan because I don't enjoy tofu.
Is that what most people would turn to?
Yeah. I think in terms of like a solid protein source, it's probably one of the best vegan sources out there. It's basically pure soy, which is a complete protein. The only trouble is obviously with a lot of vegan proteins, they're quite carb heavy as well. It's quite hard to find lean
because a lot of like the beans and is it legumes? Legumes. That's the word. I'm trying to get it right. They are like carb heavy. Everyone's like, oh, like great protein. But obviously, ultimately, like even being a vegan, like a lot of people associate sort of like trimming down with being vegan, but actually like you still or gaining weight, like you still have to be like in a calorie deficit if you're aiming for fat loss or, you know, if you're sort of pushing, you have to be aware of those levels of those different macronutrients, obviously talking about proteins, fats and carbs. So obviously you touched on there, tofu being a complete protein. Mm-hmm. So what would you like say, like, is that what other complete proteins? And I guess we should explain complete to incomplete proteins and why we need it. So do you want to just sort of delve into sort of where, I guess into that sort of like having the complete proteins as being a vegan and incomplete?
Yeah. So obviously, like, it's quite common knowledge that vegan food, there's like this whole thing around, you should eat lots of beans and chickpeas and legumes and lentils and all this stuff, because they are sources of protein.
I think that's what people turn to first.
Exactly.
Like 100%.
It's not a bad thing,
no,
because you're still going to be obtaining lots of different minerals, lots of different amino acids. But that's the trouble with it, is people rely on beans as a protein source, and all you're doing is just giving your body so much dietary fiber that it almost can't cope with it. And I hear it so much, and the amount of times, if I had £1 for every person that's told me I tried a vegan diet and I got really ill, I'd be so rich, because they always say like similar things, like I was eating a lot more vegetables, I was eating, a lot more beans, I was eating
people would
lentils,
go, I'm eating really good things, like, why am I ill?
Yeah, but it's 9 times out of 10 they just eat too much fiber. It just has the opposite effect. We have this idea that dietary fiber is a good thing, which it is.
And we do need it, because obviously if we don't have it,
Exactly. It helps with digestion, and it helps the body function normally. But if you have too much of it, it has pretty much the opposite effect, and you will have digestive issues.
Which we also need. And like, do you know what I mean? Like, just to process everything that we're intaking, like we don't want things to stop.
No, it's not good for
without
anyone.
going into too much information. But yeah, so what, obviously you're talking about all the high fiber beans and things. Then obviously, other than tofu, what other sort of sources do you, I mean, I know I contacted you about this for a client, because I was like, help me. But because it's just being aware of it, because we're so in tune, like being a meat eater, like you've got endless sort of options in terms of that. So what else do you turn to?
So for me, a lot of the time, and I mean, if you're eating more kind of protein than the average person anyway, if you're on a fitness journey, generally you are going to be increasing your protein intake. So 9 times out of 10, and I mean, this isn't just vegans, this is generally everyone, but you're probably going to buy some kind of protein supplement.
Yes.
So a protein powder.
And what you can buy now is pretty darn good. Like, there is so much. You've brought in loads of different like protein powders and stuff. And I've tried a couple, and then it was so bad. It was the caramel and white chocolate one the other day, and she was like, it slightly tastes like, I sipped it and I was like, it slightly tastes like grass.
Yes, they are a little bit earthy. They tend to be like more on the earthy side, but there are some that absolutely like,
you love the mint
nail
chocolate
the flavors.
form, don't you?
God, that's the best one.
The best one.
The best one. But
Perform,
generally,
full stop, is really good.
Like protein powders, it's where I get my protein from. Mock meats generally are a good one. Something I try and limit a little bit of.
How come?
Just because they're so heavily processed. But then again, like, we are in a day and age where all food is pretty much, it goes through some kind of processing. Nothing's ever going to be its purest form. So I try to limit how much I use mock meats. However, they are really handy in terms of protein intake, and they taste good. I've had this debate with people so many times. They're like, oh, if you're vegan, why do you eat fake meats and things like this? And it's because it tastes good. Like, I ate meat for 23 years. You're gonna know what stop doing that, but it doesn't mean that I don't enjoy the taste of it. It's a weird one, and a lot of people that messes with their head. They're like, no, I don't understand.
And I think it's really interesting, because you're not like, you've not come from the background of the sort of ethical reasons.
No.
And did you enjoy eating meat?
I did, yeah.
Like,
for a long time.
Yeah, it was never nothing sort of set
for me, it was literally just, I wanted to try something different. And I think after cutting out meat for a period of time, actually the thought of going back to eating meat kind of freaked me out.
Yeah.
I was
and,
like,
and
like
the thing
flesh.
is, if you went on to meat now, like your body would take a lot of adjusting, wouldn't it?
It probably would. And I can't see that happening. Like, for me, it's
set. You're set.
It just freaks me
out.
And
I think it's so interesting. And I think some people like to make sort of a much bigger deal of things. But you literally wouldn't even notice.
I'm not a preachy vegan at all. Like, obviously there's a lot of kind of like activists out there and like spreading the message, and like kudos to them. I'm just not that kind of vegan. Like, I don't need to shove it down people's throats. You know, my partner's not vegan.
He is
he's the least vegan person. I think his family would disown him if he went vegan. Like, he's South African, so it's but I don't tend to shove it down people's throats, and I think having that approach is always a bit nicer. And like, the people that are close to me anyway are pretty open-minded about it. And you know, if I'm visiting a friend, they'll always make sure I've got like a vegan option. Like, and for me, I always feel like the inconvenient one at the dinner table. It's like, I'm the one with dietary requirements. But at the end of the day, like, all my friends are so open-minded about it. And if I make something vegan or I take them to a vegan restaurant, they'll always try it, you know.
Oh, yeah. I think it like is incredible. Obviously, naturally, being a meat eater, you'd never normally, like, you would never think to go to those places. So if you've got like someone in your friendship group that is, I bet you know all the, like, I wouldn't have a Scooby of where to, like, if I was taking you somewhere, I'd be like, I don't know where to go. And I think some of it is really nice, like, and you know what, like, people are doing with sort of vegan sources is amazing. Like the meals that people are having as well. So did you have any like struggles? Obviously, delving more into the bodybuilding side of things, since that's kind of when you started, how did you like, what were your struggles along the way? What did you have to find out? Because obviously you're going to be wanting those responses from the body. And did you, like,
so
I feel like that's quite a big question.
It is, but it's a good question because, you know, for me, I was very fortunate to be working with a coach at the time. I know a lot of people that have transitioned to a kind of vegetarian or vegan diet and haven't necessarily been eating what they should or knowing how to access foods that are going to be beneficial for them, whatever journey they're on. So I had Abby. So that was the blessing, because she knew what to look for. She knew exactly how to structure a meal plan and what kind of nutrients I needed at a very like baseline level in order to meet my needs and to fulfill what I was doing. And when I first started, I just remember thinking like, the protein side of it is going to be really hard, and it was definitely challenging. But
thing is, I bet is now you don't even bat an eyelid.
Oh no, like I can look at something and I'm like, right, I know that's got 15 grams of protein, that's got 20. I'm just, you just
the more you get used to it.
But I think that was the blessing, was having a coach that could actually just help
guide
me through that, because I don't think I could have been a successful athlete if I wasn't working with Abby, because I would have just like made this whole transition. I don't think I would have had a Scooby what I was doing. And it's
hard. And the thing is, it's hard to know having a Scooby, even being a meat eater. Do you know what I mean? Especially towards the back end of it, when prep gets like, like really tough and you're going into those depths where it is a little bit unknowing. Like, I said this to John the other day, I could coach someone sort of quite low, but those last bits, like, that's hard to know. So it must have been, how did you find the manipulations with your foods? Like, was it much different to how I would necessarily run it?
Really? I mean, it definitely made things, approaches such as like carb cycling, for example, made processes like that a little bit more challenging, because all of my protein sources to some degree have carbs or fats in them. It's unfortunately that's just being vegan. I don't have that luxury of, if I get to the end of the day and I've still got 20 grams of protein to make up, but I haven't really got much kind of calories and other macronutrients to play around with. Yourself, you could probably be like, right, I'm just going to have a chicken breast. That's going to hit it on the head. I can't really do that. It's like, okay, I might be taking on slightly more carbohydrates or more fats. So it's just kind of like preparing myself for that and just making sure I'm planning out my meals and tracking things early. But it made things like carb cycling quite hard because
you don't have those, this is just a that.
Exactly.
Or just that, like, you know, if we've got fats, like, obviously, I mean, you're the same. Obviously, you've got nuts. It's covering, it's covering some other factors, and some protein and a tiny bit of carbohydrates. But you know, we've also got like you've got your normal oils, but you're not exactly going to sit there with a teaspoon of olive oil. Like, do you know what I mean? So it must be hard. Whereas again, like if we want just protein, we can have like just egg whites or just a chicken breast.
There are leaner sources.
So are the mock meats? Do the mock meats, are they leaner?
They tend to be. Okay. Yeah. So I literally lived off like Richmond chicken pieces for like the entirety of my prep.
Love that.
Yeah. So that was a pretty lean source of protein. And seitan is a pretty good one as well because it, you know, it's, even though it's made with like a flour, essentially it's vital wheat gluten.
Okay.
So it's not actually flour. So it's actually really, really low carb and extremely high in protein.
And what is that?
It's basically like, the only way I can describe it is like, it's almost like a loaf of bread, but it's a little bit more kind of textured. It's a little bit spongy. It's a little bit stretchy. Like,
where do you get this stuff from?
You have to make it.
I mean,
you can buy seitan. In the UK, it's a lot harder to buy. I go to European countries and they have it on the shelf, and I'm like, this is rude. But
bring it here.
I make seitan at home.
Oh,
but
cool.
There's quite a few things you kind of have to add to it as well, because seitan on its own, going back to complete protein sources, isn't a complete protein because it lacks a certain amino acid. So you can just add like pumpkin seeds to it or lentils, and it will kind of make it a complete protein. So that's quite a nice like lean source to go to, but it's just faff making it.
Yeah.
You have to bake it in water for an hour, so it has to sit in a huge like basin in the oven, and it's like bam, just takes hours.
That's fascinating. And I think it's just really important to highlight as well, being vegan, you can't just get your diet from supplements.
No,
because I know a lot of people that they're like, oh, I can't find it, or I'm not sort of researching into what I actually need. Like, the same as, you know, meat eater, we can't just have shakes all day. Like, that's going to do nada for us. Like, yes, again, it's a supplement on top of our already solid protein intake. And I guess it's the same. Like, you know, we can't just be like, oh, I'm vegan, so I'm just going to have all the protein powder for like 3 meals a day. Like,
you'd be miserable as thin if you were eating,
because you're not getting anything else.
There's no sustenance to it at all. Like, you'd be starving. You'd be starving.
And again, I guess where some people get the misconception, because you've still got all your treats. Like, there are still like nothing's different in that sense. And obviously, again, if you're less likely or less satisfied from your meals, you're going to be more likely to sort of be a little bit more indulgent into those other things as well. Naturally so, as we all would be. But along with your journey, do you have like a lot more? You've obviously got your Vegans page, which obviously I will post underneath this video /pod. And have you found a lot more people reaching out to you, asking questions? Like, have you like sort of clients? Have you got any other clients that are vegan?
I have 2 vegan clients, and I've got 1 veggie. Predominantly, I just coach pretty much day-to-day people. There's no specific like dietary requirements. But I do have like a specific program that's catered towards vegan and building muscle.
Yes.
So it's more sort of geared towards people that might be
lacking.
I guess like
lacking in knowledge of like understanding like the complete proteins, so we go and where we get
like that, for example, and it's just about building habits. So it's
that's
more
what
of like
I was
an
asking
educational
you.
program, as opposed to kind of a 4-week shred or an 8-week. You know, like It's not that kind of program. It's more education based. So it's more about like building habits, knowing what foods to pick. So we like track in depth, and they get like ebooks with it as well. So it's
it's just having all that information.
100%.
Like I found it so interesting when you sent me that message. I was like, wow, you were talking to me about silken tofu.
Yes.
So you blend it.
Yeah, so like silken tofu is like a great one because it's so versatile. So I
was blown away by this.
It's good. It's good. So you can use it for virtually anything. You can, cut it into chunks and, put it in whatever, like a noodle stir fry, whatever. You can blend it up, make it into a sauce.
See, that I think
blend it up, add
so
chocolate
good.
protein to it, other chocolate, fruit, whatever, and it's a pudding. Like, it's so versatile, and it's quite high in protein as well, which is handy.
So is it mainly protein?
Yeah. So it's essentially just a creamier version of tofu, because you get firm tofu, which is, the big block that you chop up, and, silken tofu is relatively the same. It's just a lot creamier. It's got a little bit of a different consistency. Okay. So you can just whiz it in a blender and boom.
Amazing.
Make ice cream with it. I've got like an ice cream recipe on my page. I've got a pudding recipe on my page with silken tofu. I've got a couple of like pasta sauces.
And I think the pasta sauces, like, I think that must be such a win.
Yes.
Because you're like, I am getting so much protein in here. And then obviously you can get, so like vegan pasta, is that's mainly from beans and chickpeas, and is it from legumes?
Pasta, it depends. Like normal dried pasta is all vegan anyway. Yeah. So like if you go to the shop and pick up a bag of penne pasta, it's going to be vegan. It's mostly like the fresh pastas.
Okay, yeah, because they've got egg in
them. But any dried pasta generally is vegan. But you can buy like and it's quite a good protein hack as well to consider. But you can buy red lentil pasta, you can buy pea pasta, you can buy black bean spaghetti, soybean spaghetti, and they have more protein per serving than any other. Yeah. And they are a bit lower carb as well. So if you are dieting, they are quite handy at pushing the protein up, taking the carbs down. So it's a nice little balance, but they're really good to just chuck in and just bump up that protein intake just a little bit.
And I think it's just so important to highlight, because I know I've sort of had people sort of asked me in the past and sort of really struggled with their protein intake. Like, it still needs to be like top of your priority to include. So knowing all of these little tips and things is really useful, and it's so interesting as a meat eater knowing all of these little things, because there are a lot of people out there that like, oh, I can't build muscle because I'm like, rubbish. Justine is a bodybuilder. Like, and you've had some majorly successful seasons. Like, your looks year on year, each time you have done a competitive season, have been phenomenal. And I remember you went you did PCA for the first time last year, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah.
You held that stage insanely.
I did my best. Honestly, it was probably the scariest, most daunting stage I've been on, because, PCA is not a tested federation.
Yeah.
It was
PCA is like one of I'd say it's probably one of the biggest federations, isn't it? Like, absolutely. It's huge.
But the whole day was such a vibe. Like, yes, I was intimidated as hell going into a federation like that, just because of the standard of athletes that have year on year have been going through that federation. I'm like, But I've always wanted to step on a PCA stage, so I was so glad that I did it, and I didn't look out of place.
No, you didn't.
For a little natty vegan, like, I held
and
my own.
And what a flex! That is such a flex. Like, being like, I'm on an untested fed and I'm a natty and vegan, haha. Like, and it's just awesome, and it doesn't change anything in terms of your training. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can still do so much, but yes, we still need to keep the variables in that obviously aid pushing for muscle growth or pushing for fat loss. Like, we still need those macronutrients, and to understand them, like, we don't just want carbs and fats or like, and I think that is very common in vegans, like, and not enough people sort of do their research and really discover into sort of what's vegan and what's not, and what we can have and what complete proteins are and everything. So thank you so much for highlighting it all. It's been really interesting. Obviously way out of my scope initially, so it's really nice to talk about it. and just to sort of push it out there. So, and obviously you've got your Vegains page where you share all tips and tricks and recipes and, you know, all the baked oats recipes. So yummy. So good.
I want some baked oats right now.
But yeah, so obviously Justine's got her page, and obviously if you are vegan out there and you have any other questions, she is your girl. And obviously anything in line with the nutrition things that we've spoken about, both of us are here to answer those questions. But thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, hopefully we'll see you on the next pod. A big thank you for joining me on my channel and tuning in. Find me on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, Amazon and YouTube, A Diary to Empower. Follow me on Instagram, m_power.fitness and TikTok, m.ibert. See you on the next episode.